Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and today's video I have two brand new horror release reviews to talk about with y'all. I read two books that come out this month, October, one that's already come out by the time you're watching this video, and then another one that comes out towards the end of this month. These are two very interesting horror books, and I think they're going to be quite divisive, so I did want to get my reviews out there so they could get in the hands of the right readers, because they are two very strange and not your typical horror book. So let's just go ahead and dive into the reviews. The first book, the one that's already out, I'm going to be talking about is Herculine. This is a novel by Byron that came out on the 7th of October, and I do love this cover. It's very visually striking, and this is quite the weird little demonic culty book. It's less than 300 pages, and it's such an interesting time. So we are following our main character, an unnamed protagonist, and at the start of this book she lives in New York City, and she is a trans woman, and she's just having a tough time in New York City. She's just lost her job, career prospects are really drying up. She doesn't feel like she has a good sense of community or a support system, and she keeps seeing sleep paralysis demons, but not just when she's sleeping, but during her waking hours as well. Amidst all of this turmoil and this personal crisis, she gets a text from her ex-girlfriend who invites her to come stay at Herculine. Herculine is a camp in rural Indiana, and her ex has created it as a safe haven for trans women, and this kind of rings some alarm bells, kind of brings up some trauma for our unnamed protagonist, because she has a very complex history with any sort of camp or any sort of isolated setting. She's actually gone through conversion therapy as a teen, so she's just a little hesitant about uprooting her life and then going to this commune. But because things are not going well for her in New York City, she decides to go and give this way of life a shot, and that's where things really get very bizarre, very strange, as she starts to worry. Just like a lot of isolated utopias, this is not just the simple focus on community and utopian living as she thought it would be. So this is definitely a book I would say for people who love weird girl lit. I think this fits really comfortably in that weird little subgenre, just because of the pacing of this one. It just has like this sort of dirty, grimy realism to it, and because we do spend a lot of time in New York City kind of just going through the motions alongside our main characters. So especially the first 50-60% of this one definitely feels a lot more, again, like that dirty realism, and also just that weird girl kind of nihilistic lit fic. And then when we get to the camp, things really rise to a fever pitch and get very horrific. But because of that balance and that pacing, I think I would recommend it primarily to the weird girl fitlick lovers as opposed to just a general horror audience, because the pacing for me didn't necessarily work. But I could understand how someone who maybe wasn't expecting a full throttle horror would really like that slow build up, that character study, and kind of exploring the mundane minutia of our main character's life before going to the commune. So that's definitely the target audience for this one, I would say. I did really appreciate the explorations of our main character's faith, or even lack thereof. Our character obviously has a very complex relationship with Christianity, because her mother did have her go to conversion therapy, but she also has a grandma who also practiced Christianity in a very different way, in a much more benevolent way. So there's a lot of back and forth with that, as well as the way that our main character has to confront demons that seem very metaphorical for the first part of this novel, and then really ramp up into the no, there are actual demons, this is a horror book about demons concept. Like a lot of the discussions about religion and demons and good versus evil, I liked that. I thought it kind of took a second seat to a lot of the interpersonal drama in this one, and that's what made this just an okay book for me and not a great book for me, because I think I would have appreciated more of a focus on that and less of a focus with the very weird character dynamics of all of the characters. Our unnamed narrator is kind of an unlikable protagonist, which is fine, but all of the interactions with the other characters felt just a little bit stilted. The dialogue was definitely a weak point to me of this novel, but I did appreciate what this was trying to say about what is demonic, good versus evil, and exploring just some very complex themes when it comes to community and building up faith-based organizations or groups, things like that. I thought this had a lot of good things to say there. However, I just kind of felt like this didn't really hit the landing for me. The pacing, again, like I said earlier, for me was just a little bit too slow, and I wanted more of that full-fledged horror. Like from 60% onwards, we get a lot of horror. I wish that would have been spaced more throughout this one, but I do think if not necessarily you're a big horror person, but you like a good weird girl lit, like Otessa Moshfegh with books like My Year of Rust and Relaxation for that, I think this would be a great book to pick up if you want a weird girl lit fic that focuses on a trans girl experience. So if that sounds up your alley, then I definitely would give Herculine a shot. And then next up, we have The Unveiling by Quan. This book comes out October 14th, and this one also very weird, very bizarre, very off the beaten path when it comes to horror. So we are following our main protagonist named Stryker, and she is on an expedition to Antarctica. She is a film scout, so she scouts out locations for people to film movies, and she goes on this cruise which is very much out of her comfort zone, and she's stuck on a boat with a bunch of very affluent, very annoying rich people, and they're all on the cruise for different reasons. And when an expedition to explore the surrounding area on some smaller boats and smaller kayaks goes horribly awry, some of the people, including Stryker, get stranded on an island in Antarctica, and things just go crazy from there. This book is for my fever dream lovers. If you like a book where you do not understand what is going on and it reads like the equivalent of a fever dream, then you're gonna really like this one. I think if that is something that turns you off from a book, and if you don't like a very unreliable main character, main protagonist, then I don't think you would enjoy this reading experience. And I do want to point out, because I think saying that a protagonist is an unreliable one sometimes is very much a spoiler. That is not the case in this one. From page 1 of this narrative, you notice that something is a little off with Stryker when she's having conversations with these people and even going about normal activities on this cruise ship. There will be like throwaway lines, throwaway sentences, pieces of dialogue that will really have you question like what is happening, what frame of mind she's in, and just how reliable she is. I think this one, it's very clear from the jump that she is unreliable. You just don't know why, and this is a book where don't expect to get the answers at the end of the novel. There's so much that is up in the air that you don't really know what's going on. You can make a lot of different theories about what actually happens in this novel. When I said before, giving the synopsis, it sounded very vague, and that's because this book really does make things very intentionally vague, very intentionally trippy. It references an H.P. Lovecraft book, In the Mountains of Madness, and so this is very much like fever dream, trippy, cosmic horror, so it's a lot. At no point in this book, like, I felt very confident and very sure of myself when I was reading up until the inciting accident that leaves Stryker and everyone stranded, and then I just really had no idea what was going on. I think Quan has a really excellent writing style. I don't think that this narrative would have worked for me had it been a weaker writer, but I do have to be honest, at the end of this one, I am kind of frustrated not getting any sort of closure in this one and just feeling very confused and discombobulated the whole time. So if those are buzzwords for you, I think this would be a very fascinating book for you to read, but this is not one where I'd say if you could take or leave a fever dream, what is going on atmosphere. I don't think this is going to be the one for you. What I did like about this is Stryker is a fascinating main character for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons being she is a Black protagonist. Trying not to get into spoilers because I think the less you know about this book before diving in, the better, but a lot of this book is kind of an exploration of the trauma that she had at the hands of being adopted as a Black child to a white family. I did really enjoy that conversation, and then there's just a lot of inequity between her and a lot of the other side characters in here because she is not on equal financial or social status with a lot of the other people she's stranded with because she's attending this cruise because of her job. It's being paid for by her employer. The rest of these people are just obscenely wealthy, almost caricatures at times of just these very wealthy, out of touch, mostly white people. So there's a lot of racial tensions and unease going throughout this one. I liked that exploration. I did think because there's so much else going on in this book, kind of got like lost in the mix a little bit, and because of the way it's explored and the way that this book's narrative chooses to go, I think that it's a confusing time. I didn't hate my time reading this one, but it's definitely a puzzler. It's definitely a book that I can see on Storygraph just based on early reviews. People are loving this one or hating this one, so I definitely think that this is such a talented writer. I loved the book We Ride on Sticks. I thought that was such a great book. This book, totally different than that one. So while I do appreciate Quan writing style and the way that they craft a novel, I don't think this one was for me. It was a little too up in the air, cosmic fever dreamy for me, but this was definitely such a unique book, and because of the snowy setting and the time of year it takes place, I think this would be a really trippy Christmas time read if you're into that sort of thing. But that is going to be the end of this video. Definitely two very strange and bizarre horror books. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on checking them out in October or anytime soon. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!